Good evening, I'm Andy Knebel, and welcome to Sports Beat with Craig Dahlen on PATV Channel 18 in Iowa City. Tonight, Craig's guests include former Iowa Hawkeye football players Bruce Davis and Aaron Big Monk Leonard, plus author and sports journalist Don Lund. And now, Craig Dahlen!
Welcome to Sports Beat. Hi, I'm your host, Craig Dahlen. We're going to be talking about the 1970s Iowa football. With us, we have Aaron Big Monk Leonard and Bruce Davis. My co-host is going to be Don Lund. Don, how are you doing? It's good to see you.
Hey, doing great. Should be a fun ride tonight.
Yep, we're going to be talking about the Hawkeyes then, 1970 Hawkeyes. We got Bruce Davis here with us and Aaron Big Monk Leonard. So, Bruce,
yes,
how are
Craig.
you doing?
I'm doing well, Craig. Very nice to have us on the show tonight.
Big Monk, how are you doing?
Wonderful. Cold outside, but warm in here, you know. It's all good.
Good deal. First with you, Bruce. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I knew you grew up in Gary, Indiana, and you were recruited by Frank Lauderber. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that's correct. I got out of high school back in 1973, and I was recruited by Frank Lauderber to come and play for the Iowa Hawkeyes. And I had several other Big Ten schools that I was looking at the time. And then I had a couple of friends that had came to Iowa previously. And so it kind of meant a little something special to me. And in my hometown, one of my neighbors was Alex Karras.
Oh, wow.
And
Oh.
he was good friends with my folks, and he always told them that I knew where he needs to go to college at. And so when I was coming out of high school, he happened to visit with my dad, and next thing I knew, I was on a trip out to Iowa.
So Alex Karras was, you think, was pretty much responsible for getting you here.
He had some great input that kind of focused me in that direction.
So in high school, what positions did you play?
I played offensive tackle and defensive tackle. In high school back then, you went both ways.
And some other sports you played too?
Yeah, I was involved in track and just doing the field events. And that was basically, that was all I could pretty much have during my high school days back
So
then.
what other Big Ten schools recruited you?
Well, I had Northwestern at the time, and Indiana had Lee Corso and those guys that were around, and Punt was at Northwestern. And so, you know, between those schools, I had Michigan State visit with me as well. And then I had a couple Southern schools, you know, down in Grambling and Southern University. And so then my mom was asked me what I thought about going to Iowa, and I had never been there. And so I had a visit to come out. And after leaving a town like Gary, Indiana, and I came to Iowa where the sky was blue, it was a whole different feeling, definitely. But had a chance to meet Frank Lauderber and some of the guys that were playing. They had a big recruiting year in the class before me, and they had an excellent defense. And I was looking at offense, and that was one of the things that had interested me at the time. And I thought it was a great move to consider, and I just loved the facilities. I mean, back when we was in high school and college, I never saw a weight machine until I came to University of Iowa, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, we were working out with cement cans and field weights and, you know, just regular barbells. And when I came up here and saw the facilities, I just thought this was really something different.
That's real. And it doesn't help to have, like I said, Alex Karras. He was a All-American, went on to the pros. He played probably, what, 5 years, 10 before you.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was quite.
In the 60s.
He was kind of like playing like when I was born.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So that really just shows the spread. But he had brothers too that played at Purdue at the time, and he played at Iowa. And you know, between them, they owned the business, and that's how I got that contact. You know, it was really a nice thing to have about. You know.
So Big Monk, you were from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and you got recruited, born and raised, and Frank Lauderber coached in the 70 or through 73. He recruited you also.
That's correct.
So what positions were you in high school?
Same as Bruce, offensive and defensive tackle. That was all I played, and we played both ways. I played both ways in high school. I always thought Iowa had recruited me for defensive tackle, but they really wanted me for offensive tackle, so I came out here as an offensive tackle.
Okay, so what other sports did you play in high school too?
I love playing basketball. I also tried to throw the shot. I was a shot putter in high school, but I wasn't very good at it. But junior high, played basketball. Didn't play basketball in high school. But that was about it. Basically stayed with football.
So you knew football was your ticket.
And that's the truth. That's a very good point, Craig. I always felt like I wanted to go to college. I knew that my parents couldn't really afford college, and I was blessed to actually, I say that honestly, to get a scholarship to come here and play football and help me obtain a degree. To this day, this is a true story, John Wiley, who was also from Pittsburgh, he was one of Frank Lauderber's assistant coaches. I don't know where he is now, but this is a true story. He was from Pittsburgh, played his football at Pitt. He was out here on Frank Lauderber's staff as an assistant coach, and he was back home visiting his family in Pittsburgh, and somebody who, to this day, I do not know who it was, told them, go see this kid at Shenley High School, this big kid at Shenley High School. John Wiley actually came to my high school, introduced himself to me through the coaches. Next thing I know, make a long story short, he was back in Pittsburgh. My mother and father actually had him over for dinner. Yeah. And then he invited me to come out and visit the campus, which I did in January of '73. And that was a good start for me. A good friend of mine and a guy who I played against in high school in Pittsburgh, Robert Salter, who was a defensive back in Pittsburgh, also played for the Iowa Hawkeyes. He went to South Hills High. Both of our high schools, by the way, now are defunct. They're both closed. You know, they're not even around anymore. But we played against each other in high school. Robert was a year older than me, and he was my recruiting facilitator when I came out here. And just coming out here, meeting all the people. It was very cold the weekend I came out here. That's what I remember. It was very cold. There was a lot of snow. January 1973. But I fell in love with the campus, the people I met. And Frank Lauderber actually pulled me into his office that Saturday afternoon. It was a big deal for me. You know, I wasn't highly recruited out of high school. It was a big deal for me. And he pulled me into his office and said, hey, we want to offer you a scholarship to come here and play football for Iowa. So I was like, great. It was the best deal I had coming out of high school. And so it kind of was a blessing and a dream, really, to actually go to college, play football at a major university, and just wanted to get away from home, too.
Definitely. Now, in high school, what were you guys playing weights? I'm just curious here.
Well, I was 265 pounds. 260? Yeah, well, out of high school before I came to Iowa. But then again, that was before I found out about the weight room and working out. Yeah. Because after my first summer, there were a couple of people already here from Gary, Indiana. Tyrone Dye, Nate Winston. And I had met Al Matthews and Levi Mitchell, who also was a Hawkeye. Yeah, and they were all from my neighborhood back home. And so those kind of things inspired me. As a matter of fact, when I came here and met Frank Lauderber and Coach Harrison, Bob Harrison used to be one of the coaches on the staff back in the recruiting time period. And when we came up for the summer, we had summer jobs to come out and start working out early. And by the time the season rolled around, I was down to 220. So I kind of lost all the old and went back to a rebuild.
Wow, you really cut down. You must have got just cut.
Yeah, it was pretty different. Yeah,
you got total shade. Yeah. How about you, Big Monk?
Well, my story is kind of the opposite. I've always had a love for food, and unfortunately for me, unlike Bruce, I was at home that summer, and I was working for U.S. Steel, as a matter of fact, between my senior year in high school and my freshman year here. I had a summertime job at U.S. Steel, working 40 hours a week. And I came out here and I had ballooned to like 283 pounds as a freshman.
See, the reason I'm asking this is because that's back then. I mean, that's big guys, you know. Yeah. That's big, solid guys. I mean, the weight's gone up a lot. Now 300 you see a lot, but back then you were considered real big high school kids.
I thought Bruce was big the first time I met him. As a matter of fact, I actually thought Bruce was a junior. when I found out we were both, honestly, because not only was Bruce a big guy, he was mature for his age. You know, and I always feel that, I still feel that way about Bruce. You know, we've known each other 30 years now. He's always been mature to me. But when I got off the plane in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, with about 15 other guys that were coming out here to play football. So Joe Dahlen was on that plane. Greg Hearns was on that plane. And I'm looking at these guys, and I'm like, gee, they're huge.
Yeah.
You know, I'm pretty big too, but I'm like, gee, these guys are huge. You know.
Okay, now Frank Lauderberg recruited you. So he coached, he basically was here your freshman year, and then boom, they let him go. So then you had Bob Cummings for your next 3 years. Most of your real playing days were under Bob Cummings.
That's true.
But just getting at your first, let me talk real quickly about Frank Lauderberg. Anyway, Frank Lauderberg, when he came to Iowa, he had won his previous last two Tangerine Bowls. Then Iowa hires him.
Toledo.
From Toledo.
Yep.
Comes here for 3 years, but in 1973 we were 0-11.
Didn't win a game.
And then they kind of pulled the plug. But the way it sounds is if he would have kept or got rid of his defensive coordinator, he could have kept that job. But Frank Lauderberg said, "No, I want to control these. You know, this is how I want to run it. If you don't want to do it like this, then I'm going to leave." So then they hired Bob Cummings, and now, Don, you can take over a little bit.
Well, that's where I came in. I grew up in Northwest Iowa, and I wanted to be a Hawkeye all my life. And when I got down here, it was like living a dream. You know, Jim Jensen, some of these guys, they were like my hero. You know, I listened to them on the radio. None of that stuff was on TV back then. And I'll never forget 2-a-days over at the Student Union, and we'd eat breakfast there, and then we'd go over across to the game and stuff, or to the field. And I remember giving you and Nate a ride over there one time in my '67 Bel Air, and I had a flat. And these guys go, "Hey man, we'll help you." I said, "No man, I don't want you to be late for practice." So, you know, they're saying, "Oh man, no." I said, "No, seriously, I can do it." So, you know, they walked, and then, you know, I showed up about 25, 30 minutes later and stuff, and they go, "Man, you're all right," you know. And so I thought that was kind of neat. But
did you show up in a cab?
No. I had the blue bomb going, but you know, I remember going up to Ann Arbor, and Alex Karras came in the locker room afterwards. We got beat like 24-7. Now, Monk, that's when you got hurt, and you were out for the whole year.
Yep.
Talk about that play. It was a pass play, and you were running across the field?
I was going across field to downfield block. First of all, I had kind of became the starting right offensive tackle through default because Warren Pfeiffer had blown out his knee in practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started that game at right offensive tackle, and in the second quarter, going across the field to downfield block, I didn't see this guy, and he kind of blindsided me, and it was an upper body hit. But the AstroTurf at that time period in Michigan, the Big House's AstroTurf at that time period was terrible to me.
Yeah.
My foot kind of got stuck in the turf. My knee went one way, and anyway, make a long story short, I tore some ligaments, and I didn't play anymore that year.
Yeah, because you know, that was our 12th loss in a row. So then the next week, UCLA comes to town. They got a rookie head coach named Dick Vermeil, and we were like 17-point underdogs. And we end up winning 21-10. And we'll show some pictures here later on about the screen pass Mark Fetter caught, Dan McCarney's blocking for him, Rodney Wellington. What do you guys remember about that game? I mean, that had to be, now you were here the year before, so you went through all that. I didn't come down till that summer. So, you know, that had to be one of the great thrills just to see the Hawks win, didn't it?
It certainly was. You know, I mean, when you talk about adversity, I tell you what, it just makes you think of achievement. And to go through a 0-11 season and still be a part of a program and to see where the program has come to today, it's really totally
at that time,
exciting.
UCLA was ranked
11th.
They
were ranked.
They were huge.
Yeah, they were ranked, you know.
It was one of the major upsets in college football that year. It really was.
And then we come on, we beat Northwestern 35-10. Rodney scores a couple. We beat Illinois 14-12. Can you remember that when Eddie Donovan caught that little pass in the corner from, they had the headlines in the press, Citizen, Old Wine to Solon, because Rob Fick was from Old Wine. And that was like in the last 17 seconds left in the game. Do you remember playing in it a little bit?
Yeah, I do remember that.